Hello everyone. Today I will be sharing with you how to overcome temptation. My name is Luis Carrasco, and in a previous video I shared the difference between temptation and sin. If you haven't watched it, I invite you to click on the description below. Now, when person B, which is me or you, engages with temptation, we changed to become someone corrupted. Someone who is lost, living in a fleshly nature, and is spiritually dead. So how is it that person B can overcome temptation? Was there a way for person B not to fall into temptation? And that's one question we want to explore today. 1 Corinthians 10:13 gives us some insight about this. It says, "No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful and He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, He will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it." God is faithful. So whenever we fall into temptation, God is faithful to forgive us and help us shake the dust off and continue walking with Him. But He's also faithful to not fall into temptation in the first place. We know that there are no temptations that are not common to man. So all the temptations that we all experience, they are not beyond our ability, and God provides a way of escape. So it is totally possible to overcome a temptation. When we find ourselves engaged with temptation, we might think it's too difficult, but nothing is impossible for God. So how can person B escape, resist, or evade temptation? From what we read in 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, God provides the way of escape. Therefore, God is the source of power. The power comes from the Lord. He is the provider for us to overcome temptation. The resources He gives us are prayer, meditating on the scripture. We also have resources such as fasting, the armor of God. In Ephesians 6:10-18, you can see the whole armor of God. Also the ability to flee, to escape. Now, it's important to identify our enemies. Sun Tzu in the book The Art of War says, "Know thyself, know thy enemy, 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories." Certainly, it's important to know our enemies. And number one enemy we find in the list is the devil, right? The devil is someone that is seeking to devour us. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy and the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." And the second enemy besides the devil is the devil, of course, is an outward enemy, but we have an inward enemy, ourselves, our flesh. In the end, the battle is within ourselves, and James 1:14-15 says, "But every man is tested when he is turned out of the right way by attraction of his desire. Then when its time comes, desire gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is of full growth, gives birth to death." So this is the trajectory we find whenever we are attracted by our own desires. That's when we give birth to sin. And the sin, when it's fully grown, it will produce death. So our enemies have resources that they used against us, and basically is anything in the world. 1 John 2:16 says, "For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world." So this list of things, the desires of our flesh, the desires of our eyes, and the pride of life are weaknesses that we have that Satan and our flesh will use to make us fall into temptation. But Jesus Himself overcame, and we can read about that when He faced Satan. In Matthew 4:1-2 says, "Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, and after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, He was hungry." Jesus resisted the devil by praying, fasting, and meditating on the scriptures. In round 1, we find Satan telling Jesus, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." Jesus said, "It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. So Satan questions Jesus' identity and says, prove yourself. Come on, appealing to his appetite. Jesus says, no, I am satisfied with what God provides. Jesus overcame the desire of the flesh, his appetite. Matthew 4:5-7 says, Satan told Jesus, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." To this Jesus said, "Again it is written, you shall not put to death the Lord your God to the test." In here, Jesus overcame the pride of life, the affirmation. He only seeked affirmation in God. In round 3, he took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "All this I will give you if you fall down and worship me." So Jesus said, "Begone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." So Jesus overcame the desires of the eyes, the lust. It's not just Jesus who can do this, but Jesus can help us to also fight against the desires of our eyes, the desires of the flesh, and the pride of life. The devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. It's also a promise for us. In James 4:7 says, "Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Whenever we resist the devil, just as it happened to Jesus, he will flee from us. The key is to submit ourselves to God. How do we submit ourselves to God? By prayer, meditating on the scripture, fasting, putting on the whole armor of God, and fleeing from sin. When we think of that list, it's not just on our own, right? Jesus is there to help us. Hebrews 2:18 says, "For because he himself," this is talking about Jesus, "has suffered when tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted." So Jesus is there to help us. He is God. He took the form of us as humans in the flesh. He suffered temptation, but he did not sin. Whenever we find ourselves being tempted, we can appeal to the power of God through Jesus Christ. We don't need to see this list of things as a checklist, because this is a lifestyle. We need to go over these practices with the right attitude. 1 Corinthians 16:14 says, "Let all that you do be done in love." All of these things should be done in love. Also, 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, "Whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." The fasting, meditating on scripture, praying, putting on the whole armor of God, fleeing from temptation, we do these things to glorify God. If we do any of these things without the right attitude, it won't be the right outcome. It will not fulfill the desire to overcome temptation. Thank you for watching.